When you've been married for over 20 years, you think you know the rhythm of absence. You think you can predict how the house will feel when he's gone, the way the air settles into a softer silence, how the walls seem to shift with the stillness, how even the ticking clock feels louder. My husband is a builder. Construction projects take him all over the state, and for years I've grown used to his weekly disappearances. He leaves with a kiss and a half-empty suitcase, always with the promise of coming back with stories of cities and blueprints and half-built dreams. I used to dread those days when I was alone in the house, but I found ways to fill them. Gardening, baking, cleaning closets that didn't need cleaning. But nothing ever quite filled the void his absence left behind. He knew how to hold me not just in body but in presence. When he was home I felt seen, desired, important. When he was gone I felt like wallpaper, part of the structure but invisible all the same. This time though, I wasn't completely alone. My son Daniel was home for the summer, one final break before the last stretch of medical school. He had called a few days earlier, asking if he could stay for a while. "I just need some quiet," he said. "And I miss your cooking." I missed him too. It had been almost a year since he last visited, and I still remembered how strange it felt to sleep under the same roof again. He was a man now, taller than his father, with a quiet intensity behind his eyes. He moved through the house like he still knew it, but with the confidence of someone who had learned to live without it. The first few days were easy. We made dinner together, laughed at old movies. I found myself opening up to him in ways I hadn't expected, telling him stories about his childhood, about how I once snuck into his room just to watch him sleep because I couldn't believe I had created something so perfect. He listened, really listened, and I realized I had been starved for conversation. Not just words but connection. The kind that doesn't rush to a solution but simply sits with you in the moment. Then there were the small things. How he noticed the loose hinge on the cupboard and fixed it without being asked. How he filled my car's gas tank and left a note with a smiley face. How he reached for the dishes after dinner without a second thought. It wasn't just his presence. It was the masculinity of it. That subtle, grounding strength that had been missing from the house since my husband left. I hated how much I noticed it. Hated how often I found myself studying his shoulders, the way he carried himself, the way he smelled after a shower. Fresh, clean, familiar in a way that ached. One evening, as I poured us both glasses of wine, I said without thinking, "You're becoming a man your father would be proud of." He looked at me then, not with the casual glance of a son, but something steadier, warmer. "Thanks, Mom. That means more than you know." And something flickered in the air between us. Just for a second. Later that night as I lay in bed, I found myself replaying that moment. Not because anything happened, of course not, but because of what didn't. Pause. The look. The way my heart skipped, traitorous and too loud. I told myself it was loneliness. That I missed my husband. That the ache inside me was nothing more than the echo of a woman left too long in silence. But deep down I knew something had shifted. And I wasn't sure I could ignore it much longer. It was Saturday morning when I woke to the soft clatter of dishes downstairs. The house smelled of warm sugar and sizzling butter, and I smiled before I even opened my eyes. For a moment I let myself forget everything, let my body remain under the covers, suspended in that place between sleep and memory. When Daniel walked in holding a tray, I blinked against the sunlight that spilled through the window. He was barefoot, his hair still messy from sleep, and he had that boyish grin I hadn't seen in years. On the tray were pancakes, golden, fluffy, topped with fresh strawberries and powdered sugar. He placed them gently on the nightstand and looked at me as if I were something delicate. "Breakfast in bed for the best mom in the world," he said. I sat up, surprised, brushing a hand through my hair. What did I do to deserve this? He shrugged, sitting down beside me on the edge of the bed. "You've done everything. Always." It was such a simple thing. Just breakfast. Just gratitude. But as I took the first bite and the syrup dripped warmly across my tongue, I felt the weight of it. How long it had been since someone did something like this for me. Just for me. He watched me eat, his expression unreadable. I could feel his eyes on me, like I was something unfamiliar he was trying to understand. Then he asked it. "How do you like it when your husband calls you?" he said softly. "What word does he use?" Paused, startled. I glanced at him, unsure whether to laugh it off or scold him. What kind of question is that? He didn't break eye contact. He just waited. I looked down at my plate, feeling suddenly flushed. "He calls me Kitty." It's silly, I know. He didn't smile. He just repeated it. "Kitty." And then he added, "That suits you." The way he said it didn't sound like a son teasing his mother. It sounded deeper, curious, knowing. Goosebumps rose across my arms. I put my fork down and reached for the blanket, wrapping it around myself as if it could hide the flutter in my chest. My heart was doing something it shouldn't, beating too fast, too aware. He noticed, of course. He always noticed. "I'm sorry," he said gently. "I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable." "You didn't," I replied too quickly. It's early." He nodded but didn't leave. He just stayed there beside me, quiet, as if waiting for something unspoken to pass between us. The truth was, I didn't want him to go. Not yet. For the rest of the morning, I tried to carry on as usual. I did the dishes, folded laundry, watered the garden. But something inside me had shifted. My hands trembled when they brushed against the memory of his voice saying that word. Kitty. I shouldn't have liked it. I shouldn't have felt anything at all. But I did. And that scared me. He stayed close all day, helping me sweep the back porch, following me into the kitchen to help chop vegetables. His nearness made my skin too alert, my senses too sharp. I tried to convince myself that it was all in my head. That I was tired, fragile from the long days without my husband. That maybe I was just lonely. But when he handed me a glass of water and his fingers lingered just a second too long, I knew it wasn't just me. That night, after I said goodnight and closed my bedroom door, I leaned against it, trying to catch my breath. I pressed my palm to my chest and felt the warmth that hadn't left me all day. Daniel is my son. Adopted, yes. But that distinction meant little when I had raised him, loved him, tucked him in when he was sick, watched him grow into the man now walking through my kitchen like he belonged to the walls. And yet, something has changed. I stared at myself in the mirror, brushing out my hair in slow, careful strokes. I searched my reflection for shame, for guilt, found them both. But I also found something else. Longing. The kind I hadn't let myself feel in a long, long time. That night I couldn't sleep. I turned over again and again, the sheets tangled around my legs like the thoughts in my mind. It was one of those insomniac stretches where the darkness felt too quiet, too aware, and every sigh I let out only echoed back louder. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. I reached for it, hoping it would distract me. It was a message from my husband. "Good night, I miss you, my kitty." The words wrapped around me with a bittersweet warmth. Kitty. That name he reserved only for me. Gentle, playful, intimate. It always made me feel chosen, desired. But now the word triggered something else too. A flush of heat and guilt spread beneath my skin as if my body itself remembered Daniel's voice using it. His voice echoing something sacred. And I had let him. I had allowed it. I hadn't stopped him. The shame came like a tide. I buried my face into the pillow, squeezing my eyes shut. I love my husband. I love the life we built. But the house without him feels like a shell sometimes, like a picture without the color. And Daniel. He had started to bring light into corners of me that I hadn't realized were growing dim. That's when I heard the soft knock. Before I could answer, the door creaked open and Daniel stepped inside. His silhouette framed in the hallway light. He wore a simple t-shirt, his hair damp from a shower. His presence quiet but assured. "I'm sorry if I woke you," he said gently. We learned this amazing massage technique in class for tension and stress. Supposed to help with sleep. I thought maybe you'd like to try it. I hesitated. I should have said no. But I didn't. He noticed my pause, my wariness. You don't have to, Kitty, he said softly, and when that word left his lips again, uninvited but not unwelcome, I felt the world tilt just slightly. It wasn't the word itself. It was the way he said it. Like it belonged to him now too. I hated that part of me responded to it. Still I nodded. Daniel stepped farther in and motioned to the bed. Just lie back. It'll only take 10 minutes. He sat with his back against the headboard, pillows propped behind him, and patted his legs. Rest your head here, he said casually, as if it were nothing. As if it weren't everything. I moved slowly, uncertain. I laid back, my head on his thighs, the crown of my head resting gently against the firmness of him. His hands found my temples, slow and steady, and the first motion of his thumbs made something inside me dissolve. The massage was good. Oh good. The rhythm of his fingers, the circles he made behind my ears, the way his thumbs pressed just right at the base of my skull. It was almost too intimate for something so innocent. I closed my eyes, letting myself melt into it. Letting the loneliness slip into the quiet. His breath was even, his focus gentle. For a moment it felt like nothing else existed. Just his hands. Just the heat. Just the name he whispered again, low and slow. Do you like Kitty? He said near my ear, and I swear I didn't breathe. Something in his tone was different this time. Less teasing. More deliberate. I wanted to speak. I wanted to say something, anything, but I couldn't. My body didn't move. My lips didn't part. I was frozen in this strange, fragile state between shame and surrender. His touch hadn't crossed any visible line, but the atmosphere had changed. We both felt it. We both knew. His hands moved through my hair as if it were silk, brushing behind my ears, then over the back of my neck, leaving a trail of warmth. You're beautiful when you're relaxed, he murmured, more to himself than to me. I should have sat up. I should have told him to stop. But I didn't. Because deep down, in that lonely part of my heart that ached every night my husband was gone, Daniel's presence had become a bomb. A dangerous, intoxicating bomb. When he finally stopped, his hands resting gently on my head, I remained there, pretending I was too sleepy to move. As if sleep would wash this all away. But I didn't sleep. I lay there long after he left, wide-eyed in the dark, the scent of his skin still on the pillow behind me, the word Kitty echoing silently in my ears. And I knew then we had reached a threshold. And neither of us had truly turned back. I lay there still, my head cradled on his legs, the pressure of his hands finally stilled at the crown of my head. The room was quiet, save for the faint creak of the house settling and the whisper of the wind tapping the window. His fingers, which had been drawing small patterns near my temples, paused. I should have taken it as my chance, should have sat up, offered him a tired smile and said thank you like the mother I was supposed to be. But I didn't move. Something in the stillness had thickened. Like the air between us was holding its breath, waiting. I felt his body shift, the tension in his thighs as he leaned slightly forward. I thought he was reaching for the blanket or adjusting the pillow beneath me. But then I felt it. His lips. They pressed softly against my forehead at first. A touch so gentle it could have been mistaken for something innocent. Motherly even. But it wasn't. Not the way he did it. Not with the pause afterward, the way he hovered there. Then, without a word, his mouth found mine. There was no warning. No prelude. And yet, I didn't pull away. My breath caught in my throat. My whole body locked as if time had stopped moving, and all that remained was the heat of that single, quiet kiss. It wasn't deep. It wasn't urgent. But it was deliberate. Meaningful. His lips were warm, and his hands, once resting on my head, slid slowly to my shoulders, anchoring me in place with a pressure that was as tender as it was unrelenting. My heart thundered. Not from fear. From guilt. From longing. I should have pushed him back. I should have told him no. But I didn't. Because in that moment, something inside me unspooled. The days without my husband had grown longer and more silent. The absence of his voice, his scent, his touch, it had carved an ache into me so deep I hadn't even realized how hollow I'd become. And Daniel had filled the air with warmth again. With presence. With attention. He wasn't just a visitor anymore. He had become part of the silence. When our lips parted, I opened my eyes, breathless and trembling, still leaning against his chest. His face was close to mine, his voice low and even. "Tomorrow," he whispered, brushing a strand of hair from my cheek. "We'll continue, Kitty." The name slid between us like a match strike in the dark. I turned my face away, ashamed. Not just because he had kissed me, but because I hadn't stopped him. Because part of me didn't want to. Because the moment his mouth had met mine, the ache inside me stopped being quiet. He stayed beside me for a moment longer, as if waiting to see if I would speak. But I didn't. My breath came shallow and unsure. My throat felt tight. And when he finally rose and walked out of the room, leaving the door cracked behind him, I lay still, my lips tingling, my heart cracked open by something I didn't yet have words for. The kiss had been soft, but its echo was deafening. The room was too quiet after Daniel left. Too still. The soft creak of the floor where he had walked lingered like the aftertaste of a secret. My chest rose and fell too fast, and my skin burned beneath the covers, as if trying to rid itself of the heat that had sunk in so deep it touched the marrow. I turned over. Then again. And again. Sleep wouldn't come. It was almost 1 a.m. now, and still my eyes stared into the ceiling, unblinking. Everything inside me churned. Guilt, confusion, hunger. I pressed the heels of my hands into my face, trying to smother the truth that had begun to bloom like fire inside me. But I couldn't smother it. There was a volcano inside my stomach. Hot, heavy, relentless. It pulsed in waves, crashing through the dam of restraint I had spent years building. I closed my eyes, clenched my jaw, tried to breathe through it, to suppress it. But the more I resisted, the stronger it surged. Until it broke. My body trembled under the covers, and I did the only thing I could. I covered my mouth with my hand as the heat overwhelmed me. Shame coated my skin like a second layer. I was 30 seconds away from crying, from laughing, from screaming into the dark. I bit down hard into my knuckles, tears pressing at the corners of my eyes, my breath ragged and broken. The volcano had erupted. Not loudly, but with a surrender so complete, it left me quiet in its ruin. And when the wave passed, I lay there, wet-cheeked, stunned, emptied. Not by Daniel. Not by the kiss. But by what I had discovered inside myself. Need. A hunger I had buried too long. And a loneliness that had gone unnoticed until someone touched it. I didn't remember falling asleep. But when I woke, the sun was already streaming through the blinds. The morning was too bright. Too bold. I moved slowly, my limbs heavy with the residue of a night I would never speak of. I padded softly into the kitchen, hoping to pass through unnoticed. Daniel was there, already pouring coffee. He looked at me as I entered, and I quickly looked away, grabbing a mug, pretending to fuss with the creamer. I couldn't look at him. Not after everything. Not when the memory of his lips on mine still pulsed like a heartbeat beneath my skin. He noticed, of course. Of course he did. He set down his cup and crossed the kitchen slowly, deliberately. His presence filled the space behind me before I even turned around. And then he leaned close. So close I could feel the heat of his breath against my ear. "You don't have to be ashamed, Kitty," he whispered. His voice was soft. "Steady. You're a good girl." Those words slid through me like silk laced with fire. Closed my eyes. "Don't," I whispered back, barely audible. But he didn't pull away. He just stood there, still and quiet, letting the silence carry all the weight that words never could. I should have told him to leave. Should have put space between us. But I couldn't move. Because something had already shifted. Something had already been broken open. And once something cracks, it doesn't uncrack. Wait. In silence. In memory. in the spaces between. The night air felt heavy, pressing in through the cracks of the house, through the space beneath my door, through my own breath. I lay there, still and bare under the soft cotton sheets, waiting. Every second stretched into a question. Every minute tasted like guilt. 20 minutes passed. I had nearly talked myself out of it, convinced myself that he wouldn't come, that this had all been in my head, a fantasy conjured by loneliness. But then I heard the door creak. Daniel entered quietly. No words. No hesitation. He wore a tight black t-shirt, one I hadn't seen before. It clung to him like intention. His arms were sculpted in the soft light, and the way the shirt pulled at his shoulders made it impossible not to look. His cologne, spiced and clean, masculine in a way that tugged at memory, followed him like a whisper of something dangerous. Felt disarmed. He closed the door behind him but didn't speak. He simply walked to the nightstand, placed a small bottle on it, strawberry oil, and then met my eyes with a calm so steady it made me tremble. "Tonight," he said softly, "we'll release all the tension." His voice was velvet laced with gravity. He moved to the edge of the bed and waited. I lay back slowly, unsure if I was surrendering or surviving. My breath was shallow as he poured a few drops of the oil into his hands. The scent lifted around us, sweet, warm, thick with memory and temptation. He started at my shoulders, then down along the sides of my ribs, his hands gliding with practiced care. When he reached the center of my chest, just beneath the collarbone, his touch grew slower, reverent. He pressed his palms gently, circling the tension with movements that made me forget the edges of my body. And then, in a whisper that danced along the base of my neck, he said, "Good kitty." A ripple passed through me, of shame, of pleasure, of something ancient and wordless. He kept repeating it, softly, calmly, like an anchor in the storm inside me. I didn't reply. Couldn't. My voice had been replaced by breath and surrender. And then everything paused. The door opened. My breath caught like a flame. My husband stood there. Time did not shatter. Simply stilled. He didn't speak. Didn't shout. He looked from Daniel's hands to my face to the oil on the nightstand. His eyes were unreadable, neither surprised nor hurt. Just still. Present. Then, slowly he stepped forward. He bent down and kissed me on the cheek. Not with passion. Not with forgiveness. With something quieter. Something deeper. A silent acknowledgement of everything I couldn't say. Then, without a word, he poured a few drops of oil into his hands, rubbing them slowly, methodically. He joined Daniel at the side of the bed, not touching the same places, not asking questions. He simply placed his hands on my lower abdomen and held them there, solid and warm. Daniel moved to the higher part of my body, near the ribs, the edge of my chest, and the space where breath begins. No one spoke. No one moved too fast. And for one suspended moment in time, we sat there, the three of us, in a kind of silence that no one dares to write down. Because it doesn't belong to the world outside. It belongs only to those who have crossed a line and have chosen, in that terrifying stillness, not to look away. I don't know how long we sat there. Daniel's hands warm above my ribs, my husband's palms resting gently below. The room was quiet, but inside me, the silence cracked like ice under pressure. Something had been building for too long. Something buried beneath duty, routine, and the silence of wanting. Broke. Not with words. Not with movement. With feeling. The volcano inside me. The one that had been rumbling since the first time I looked at Daniel and saw a man instead of my son, finally erupted. It wasn't loud. Didn't explode. It flowed slowly, steadily, hot and unstoppable. Tears welled in my eyes, uninvited, unstoppable. My body trembled not from shame anymore, but from the impossible collision of love and longing. I pressed my hand to my face, just as I had the night before, but this time I didn't hide. "I can't," I whispered. My voice cracked. I can't hold this anymore. My husband didn't move. He kept his hands on me like an anchor. Daniel didn't flinch either. He simply looked at me with something that wasn't lust or confusion. It was compassion. I love you, I said to the room, to both of them. I love you both. And I don't know how to carry that. The confession hung between us like a flame suspended in the dark. I felt their touch, still there, still steady. I'm not proud of it, I said through my tears. But I've been empty for so long. I didn't mean for it to happen. I didn't want this. Daniel leaned forward. But you needed it. I turned my face to my husband, tears on my cheek. I didn't mean to let him in. I just needed someone. And he saw me. His face was unreadable. But there was no fury. Only time. And time was stretching out in all directions now. I don't know what happens next, I said quietly. But I needed this moment to be real. Because for the first time I didn't feel invisible. I felt held. My husband finally spoke. His voice barely above a whisper. You are. And Daniel, still near me, took my hand. Always. It wasn't a solution. It wasn't forgiveness or judgment or resolution. It was just the truth. The truth of a woman who had given everything and lost parts of herself along the way. The truth of a son who saw not just a mother, but a woman aching to be seen. The truth of a husband who, despite everything, remained. And in that room, lit only by soft lamp glow and the shared weight of impossible love, something quietly beautiful bloomed in the firelight of confession. Not approval, not permission, but understanding. And sometimes, that is the bravest ending of all.